To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Alright, before we get into this, I know I made a video kind of similar to this one last year, but I figure it's time to make a new and updated one because I like attractions. And come on, if you don't like Disney attractions, what are you doing here? Now, the Disney parks and resorts have been a source of joy and inspiration to all the world for over 60 years now. Over 60 years is a long time to be operating as a theme park, and with all that time comes lots of changes. Changes that some of us are excited about and others not so much. Today, I'm going to walk you through a few of my favorite extinct Disney attractions, not necessarily just limited to Disneyland. So everyone, without delaying for another second, here are 10 extinct Disney attractions that need to return. Number 10. Journey into Imagination at Epcot in Walt Disney World. Now, if I were to ask you what Epcot's official mascot would be, odds are that you'd probably answer with Figment. Figment is the lovable purple dragon from Journey into Imagination with Figment at the Imagination Pavilion at Epcot. Figment still exists in the attraction today and is the featured mascot of most of Epcot's festivals throughout the year. But he originates from a classic Epcot attraction, Journey into Imagination. See, it was intended to be an opening day attraction at Epcot, but due to unforeseen circumstances, the ride opened the following year in 1983. Whimsical would be the best way to describe Journey into Imagination. Figment would be joined by his good friend the Dreamfinder, and the two would go on a colorful, to say the least, look at that, oh, that's a lot of colors, journey exploring the wonders one could accomplish by using their imagination. Although the ride was very popular, it closed in 1998 and was replaced by Journey into Your Imagination, which, as we all know, was widely regarded as a major downgrade from the previous incarnation of the Imagination Pavilion. People absolutely hated it. Journey into Your Imagination was only open for about 2 years before Disney decided, yeah, you guys were right, probably not the best idea to replace Journey into Imagination. So what did they do? Journey into Imagination starring Figment opened in June 2002. This version of the Imagination Pavilion combined the Research Institute idea from the previous version with the whimsical Figment-related segments of the original attraction. Journey into Imagination starring Figment opened to a resounding, yeah, well, it's better than what we had. It's been there ever since. But can you imagine if Epcot and Disney decided to go back to the original idea for Journey into Imagination? Not only that, but what if they updated the attraction's effects and animatronics with more modern-day, up-to-date effects? Heck, they could even make use of the 2.5D technology that they're using for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway in Hollywood Studios. I don't even know what 2.5D means right now, but hey, it could work in the Imagination Pavilion. So maybe if we all gather together and imagine hard enough, Journey into Imagination will reopen at Epcot with its original glory and splendor, someday. Number 9. The Home of the Future at Disneyland. The Monsanto House of the Future was a classic Disneyland attraction which operated from 1957 to 1967. The House of the Future was a strange-looking cross-shaped house that rose high above some of Tomorrowland and some of Fantasyland. It was sort of near where Tinkerbell's Pixie Hollow area is today. Guests would walk in and were given tours of the house. The house contained many technological advancements that the guests might see in their own homes within the next 10 years or so. Oddly enough, the attraction was closed 10 years after it opened because the technology that they were putting into the house couldn't really keep up with the technology that was advancing outside of Disneyland. But just think for a second if Disney reopened a House of the Future style attraction and updated it maybe not even once, but 2 or 3 times every single year. Have it be sponsored by Tesla or Boeing or General Electric. Guests would be able to be given tours of the house and see new technology that they could be using in their own homes within the next year or even 2 years instead of 10 years. Less in the vein of robot maids and servants and more in the vein of electric self-driving cars though. I just think reopening the House of the Future would be a great way to educate, entertain, and excite guests of all ages about the future. Number 8. The Great Movie Ride at Disney's Hollywood Studios at Walt Disney World. The Great Movie Ride only recently closed, but for those of you who don't remember, it used to take you through scenes of classic Hollywood films. These films would include The Mummy, The Wizard of Oz, Alien, and of course Mary Poppins. Recently though, the Great Movie Ride closed in order to make room for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. You know what I was talking about earlier in the Journey into Imagination part with the 2.5D? Yep, the Great Movie Ride is no more. But think about it, if Disney were to reopen a sort of great movie ride style attraction, they could make this one a walkthrough version. Now, stay with me, I know that sounds a little weird. If Disney were to make something similar in the vein to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, but instead of wax figures, you'd be having audio animatronics, they could have 3 sections dedicated to the past, present, and, of course, the future of film. The past section would feature classic great movie ride scenes featuring The Wizard of Oz, Casablanca, or even The Mummy. Of course, the line would always have to be moving, so you'd be ushered along sort of similar to the stretching room in the Haunted Mansion, possibly by a host or hostess, maybe named Muggsy. The present section of the ride would feature props and costumes, not animatronic figures, of movies that are coming out soon or that came out recently. That way it would be easier to switch out the scenes as the days and years go by, instead of having to make new animatronic figures for every single movie that comes out. That way it's easier to update. And lastly, the future section would feature less of the characters from the past section and props and costumes from the present section, and feature more about the technology and innovation that's happening in filmmaking. You could have an IMAX camera on display and show us how it differs from a normal digital movie camera, or you could show us how special effects work and how facial reconstruction can work in movies. The technology and the future of Hollywood is something that we'd be exploring in this section. So yeah, that's my idea for a brand new great movie ride style attraction. Number 7. The Timekeeper at the Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. Now I have very vague memories of watching The Timekeeper. It closed in 2006, so I was alive to witness it, and I remember absolutely loving it. Now for those of you who don't know, The Timekeeper was an attraction hosted by, of course, the Timekeeper, voiced by Robin Williams. It was a circle vision attraction which featured time travel, where the Timekeeper would send his apprentice, Nine-Eye, back in time to different periods in human history. The Timekeeper's apprentice, Nine-Eye, was called Nine-Eye because they used 9 different cameras to film circle vision films back in those days. But everybody, the next step for the evolution of video entertainment is already here. Virtual reality. Imagine something similar to The Void in downtown Disney or Disney Springs, where you go into a building, they hook you up to some VR equipment, and you go into the show building. Imagine The Timekeeper, but way more immersive. You're going to be sent back in time with Nine-Eye, and you can feel the breeze on your skin, and you can smell all the smells of the past periods in time. Like I said, something similar to The Void, but with a Timekeeper skin on it, something that makes it feel awesome and futuristic. Because we all know we'd love to travel back in time and experience this show in its prime. Number 6. The Submarine Voyage at Disneyland. Now granted, we still do have the Finding Nemo submarine voyage at Disneyland to this day, but what if they changed the theme up a little bit? Instead of actually traveling around in submarines, just make it look like you get into a submarine, but you actually just go underwater into a sort of Omnimover style system. That way the submarines aren't as claustrophobic as they are these days. Then you'll travel through some classic and familiar scenes featuring live mermaids perhaps, a giant octopus, and some Nautilus journey to the center of the earth, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea style props, and then perhaps you'll travel through some brand new scenes featuring real fish and real aquatic creatures so you can educate the children while they're being entertained. Something that Disney does remarkably well. This would be an amazing blending of a dark ride and an aquarium, something that they feature at Epcot in the seas with Nemo and friends. You know, something just to make the submarine voyage more approachable and make sure the lines aren't always super long. Because I love the submarine voyage, I really do. I've been to Disneyland plenty of times, but I've only been on the submarine voyage once. So if you were to make the submarine voyage more accessible and quicker to get on, I feel like it could be a real big hit with the guests. Number 5. Adventure Through Inner Space at Disneyland. See, Adventure Through Inner Space is something I think of when I think classic Disneyland dark ride attractions. The ride itself is narrated by Paul Frees, who you might recognize from the Haunted Mansion as the ghost host. Through the power of magnification, the guests are shrunk down to the size of an atom and journey through, well, inner space. You get up close and personal with a snowflake as you journey into its frozen fractals and reveal the secrets of the inner space that surrounds everything we are. Pretty deep, but also pretty cool looking. If Disney were to bring this attraction back and replace Star Tours with it, cause I mean, come on, Star Wars is getting its own land. We don't need it in Tomorrowland anymore. They could redo the attraction with more up-to-date effects. Or if they wanted to do a full tie-in, maybe they could make it something with Ant-Man, because, you know, he shrinks. And a pretty big plot point in the first Ant-Man is about going subatomic, and that's exactly what you do in Adventure Through Inner Space. Plus, I also just feel like bringing back a classic Disneyland attraction with a fresh coat of paint would be amazing. Number 4. Space Station X1 at Disneyland. Now, Space Station X1 is a very obscure old Disneyland attraction. Guests would enter the building and see a pre-show describing what they're about to see, and then they would enter a room and they would view Earth from orbit. Nothing incredibly miraculous, it was just a painting of Earth as you would see it from outer space. Imagine taking that same idea and running with it, orbiting the Earth. Take an attraction, maybe a lighter version of Mission Space, even lighter than the Green Team version of Mission Space. Guests could experience orbiting not only Earth but different celestial bodies, the sun, maybe even a black hole. Of course with varying intensities for each, so if you're orbiting a black hole, let's say it's going to be slightly more intense than if you were orbiting just the moon. I don't know, just something really fun I thought of, a classic Disneyland attraction brought up to the modern day. Something that not a whole lot of guests would have experienced in the first place, but something that people would now be lining up down the street for. Space Station X2, they could call it. Yeah, that makes sense. Number 3, Horizons at Epcot at Walt Disney World. Now what can I say about Horizons that hasn't been said 100 times before? It functioned as a sort of sequel to the Carousel of Progress, bringing us into the future, whereas Carousel of Progress brought us through the past. The thing with Horizons is, though, that you wouldn't even have to update it for a modern audience. It hasn't aged poorly at all. It would fit right in with the theming of Spaceship Earth, where Spaceship Earth brought us from the past to the present, Horizons would bring us from the present into the future. Like I said at the beginning, Journey into Imagination was a classic Epcot attraction, but Horizons was the classic Epcot attraction. Bringing back a non-IP dark ride into Epcot I think would be the breath of fresh air Epcot needs at this time. Plus it would be amazing for someone who never got to ride the original attraction, like me. You could even bring back that amazing If We Can Dream It Then We Can Do It song, just not sung by children this time because it kinda scares me, honestly. Maybe just do an instrumental version of that. Yeah. Number 2, the People Mover at Disneyland. I mean, come on, do I really need to explain myself with this one? You guys all knew it'd be on this list. The People Mover is probably my favorite attraction in Tomorrowland at Walt Disney World, and at Disneyland it's actually been closed for quite some time. The track is still there today, unused, and if you know where to look for it, you can see different areas where the People Mover would exit and enter different buildings. Unfortunately though, the rocket rods, a future incarnation of the People Mover at Disneyland, kind of ruined the track and made it unusable. So Disney, listen to me. Yes, you Disney employee watching this, listen to me. Tear the track down. Close all of Tomorrowland down. I don't care how long it takes. Get that People Mover up and running again. Love, every single Disney fan. And finally, number 1, Discovery Island at Walt Disney World. Originally opening 3 years after the Magic Kingdom opened in 1974, Discovery Island was pretty much the Animal Kingdom before Animal Kingdom was a thing. Discovery Island was actually recognized as a real zoological park in 1974. You could view exotic birds, animals, and all different species of wildlife on this island. Of course, after Animal Kingdom itself opened, Discovery Island's number of visitors dropped off dramatically. So Disney closed Discovery Island, but instead of tearing everything down and leaving it as a nature preserve, Disney decided to leave everything they had built there still there. So if you were to visit these days, which I say is highly discouraged because you'd be banned from going on Disney property for the rest of your life, you'd find abandoned pathways and buildings that used to be home to hundreds of animals and, of course, tourists. If Disney were to reopen the island, go in there and tear everything down that they had once built and built up a brand new sanctuary, call it, I don't know, the Discovery Sanctuary, visitor numbers would be through the roof. Those are just 10 of my ideas though. Let me know down in the comments below if there are any abandoned or extinct attractions that I missed that you'd like to see coming back to the Disney parks. If you ever find yourself missing an old attraction that is closed down a long time ago, just remember that no good idea at Disneyland ever goes unused. So you know what that means. If we all believe and tell Disney what we think, someday we're gonna get the People Mover back! Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Remember that there is a giveaway going on for some Disneyland and Disney World plaques. More information will be in the description down below, and if you want to snag yourself an awesome offhand Disney t-shirt, well, that's down in the description also. Be sure to follow me on Twitter if you want some more updates regarding the channel and when I will be at Disneyland, and make sure to donate on Patreon in order to enter that contest, or if you just want to support me, that's also great too. Again, thank you guys all so much for watching the video. I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.